right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's get into our substantive conversation on CBC. Two main questions: is this working, and what are the solutions going forward? The president has also planning to have a task force to review CBC and also do a bit of public participation to find out those two exact questions that we're talking about. So let's do a quick assessment right now. And Wesaya, I'll start with you. Is this working for the country?
It is not. And I say this with confidence, because I think in 2017, I sat here and I said it was not going to work, because there are two things that a curriculum needs to serve for any country. When you want to change any system of education for any country, you begin by founding a philosophy that then the curriculum shall be anchored on. As it is now, we do not have a philosophy for CBC. Number two, we needed to have found the national goals with which this curriculum and education reform was going to help us fulfill. As it is now, we are wishy-washy on those goals. So we are groping in the dark, but we have live bullets. We need to switch on the lights and just do the right thing. Okay. Sossion, is this working for the country or not?
Yeah, I think now Kenyans are coming to agree with me. I have been very consistent on how the CBC in quotes, because what we have in this country, what we have under implementation is not CBC as such. And I would say there has never been CBC in our classrooms. There has never been. It is not there. And teachers are not teaching CBC, they're teaching outcome-based curriculum. We are cheating ourselves as a country. And that is why there are a lot of issues that are coming out. It's automatic that we have these issues. So fundamentally speaking, and as you have seen, the president has given direction. By the time the president gives direction, it means there is a problem. Now you can see there is an outright public outcry. And when a curriculum is not accepted by parents, children are not excited about it, teachers cannot implement, then that is the wrong curriculum. So we did things the wrong way. You know, if we want to succeed, let the professionals do their work and design a curriculum that works in a professional manner. This was not done right from the beginning. CBC was politically imposed. It was hurriedly implemented. You cannot do a pilot between June 2017 and you end the piloting in October 2017 without even a summative evaluation report. You are talking of rolling out the next year. I think we missed many things and we will continue missing. And now we have an opportunity to remedy this through this review that will be domiciled, that task force will be domiciled at the presidency to correct all this. And let me take you back to memory lane. When teachers in 2019, April, raised their concerns about the quality of training, that the trainers who were training them could not interpret the CBC designs, and therefore they were wasting time, and the quality of trainings were a sham, you know, the government reacted. And I think the outgoing president using TSC by interdicting 285 teachers. How do you interdict teachers who are questioning the quality of training? So that's where the rain started beginning to beat us. Number two, when Amina Mohammed, the cabinet secretary for education, received a summative evaluation report from experts that had been assigned to do that work, and that is Professor Labanairo, is still here at Catholic University, and gave a very convincing report that the country was ready and was not ready. And if we were to mount a proper CBC, we needed more time to prepare. That was agreed in a stakeholders meeting, that it be postponed, the rollout be postponed, so that we can get down to further preparation of teacher training and investment in areas that are necessary, and design the CBC properly. Within a few days, Amina was cajoled and removed from the ministry and thrown to the Ministry of Sports. And cartels have taken over this program for purposes of business. And I would say this curriculum was not designed by Kenyans. It never went through public participation. Kenyans never had their input. Critical institutions, even like Parliament, did not discuss it. And it was imposed by foreign interest. And when it's about foreign interest, it will have no connection with the national goals. It will have no connection even with the National Development Plan. Now we are talking about industrialization at the counties. We must reconfigure our education system to support industrialization and to have a link with the same. This curriculum has no link. It's like, and I dare say here, I want to challenge any country in Africa that has designed an education system that has promoted industrialization, that we even have manufacturers who are Africans. They are not there. Very often, some of these curriculum reforms, like what we have in Kenya, is meant to take us away from the roadmap of industrialization and roadmap of strengthening the African economy and graduates of our school system in active participation in our economy and in manufacturing. Okay. We will still, such systems are always imposed on us so that we remain slaves and workers for entities in Asia, entities in Europe, and entities in North America. Okay. So I think it is time. We have an opportunity to relook at our education system, not CBC. Okay. I say we relook at our education system and we reconfigure our education system to match with our national development plan and to match with Vision 2030 to produce competitive human resources, not just competitive in terms of labor, but in terms of innovation and active participants in technology.
Okay, we'll come and talk about the solutions in just a bit. But Janet, what is your assessment? Is this working for the country or not?
Trevor, I would want to pitch the conversation a little bit higher. Because really we might not be able to sit here and really give parents information that they cannot be able to verify, sit here and be alarmist. We must be alive to the fact that there are millions of parents that have taken their children and are taking their children through this CBC. And so, therefore, we really ought to be very measured about the things we say about investments that other people have made about their lives. And I would say that the conversation that I know the president of this country has asked for, I want to believe it is not a conversation about scrapping CBC or continuing with it. I would say that is really simplistic, but it's a conversation of looking at what has worked so that we can uphold it and what has not worked so that we see how we want to fix it. From where I sit, that is my understanding of the conversation that the president has asked. Otherwise, he could not have formed a task force. It was very easy for him to say scrap CBC, because that is what a lot of people were thinking, especially those people who like being very populist and standing on platforms and really say so many things. You know, when you stand on a political platform, you cannot be able to analyze for example, a task force finding, you cannot be able to analyze things, but you'd quickly say one thing that would cheer up people. But then again, I want to really say that, again, the education conversation is so important to be reduced into a context of the fourth administration vis-a-vis the fifth administration. I think the education conversation is more deeper, than that. And it also involves a higher level of accountability because a lot of parents are involved, their emotions, their children, and so on and so forth. But I also want to say that having been around, and I really thank God for the panel that we have today, because these are people that we have hung around the education sector for quite a long time. And even when the president, the late president Mwai Kibaki, former president Mwai Kibaki, and he touted really for the blueprint that he left on the economic front of this country. And when he was documenting what he believed would work for this country for the next 30 years, is what we call the Vision 2030. Education is at the center of it. And when I hear people saying that there have been no consultations, I really think that, Trevor, people really want to over-discuss things. And that's where I really want to thank the fourth administration for being bold to implement a curriculum reform. Because the Vision 2030 since when we started writing it and having education as at the center of it, envisioned a different curriculum from the 844 curriculum. We are 7 years shy of 2030, and I still hear people saying that we still want to discuss. Do we want to discuss until 2030 is here? And I think it's very bold of the previous administration to have said, we are coming out of the closet and we want to try this and work it out, because we believe that we need a change. But how we work it out, I think for me, it will never be right. 2010 is our constitution that we gave unto ourselves, but we have not even finished implementing every part of it. We still say that we need time for this, we need room for this, we need room for this. Right now, people were even clamoring for the change of that very constitution. But that did not mean that it was bad and we live in the old dispensation. I think I really want to encourage Kenyans to move on. And I also want to challenge the president that really a leader is a person who really braces for the challenge. You know the direction that you want people to travel, acknowledge that the path is not as smooth, walk through the challenges, provide leadership along the way, but I would not expect that he would look for a very convenient way to get out of the education challenges by saying we want to shelve CBC so that we can conveniently and comfortably walk into the 844 system. Because I have been around and I've listened to parents, a lot of who, and I would want to quote some of them who tell me for sure that they like CBC. The only challenge that they're complaining about is the involvement of parents. So I think this is a conversation that really needs to happen in a very moderated way, knowing so well that it's a very weighty debate. For example, I'm just wondering, by the time you set up a task force and we are looking at 6th graders who are supposed to transition to junior secondary school, so that, yes, it's a good thing to form a task force because then it gives you a round table where everybody comes in and we are able to moderate, the conversation and get as much information as we can. But I think also it's a little bit more urgent because the sector needs feedback so that parents and children can be able to know how they are bracing or how they are facing the next year.
Okay. Wesaya, now that you say that it lacks philosophy and the national goals, should it be scrapped then?
If we talk about scrapping or proceeding, then we will be narrowing the debate into an angle that is not useful for this country. What I will say is that if anybody sits close to the president, then the president needs to be told that the task force that is envisioned elicits memories that are not very favorable to many Kenyans, because as it were, the education sector has had the highest number of commissions and task forces since independence. But then the findings and the reports from those task forces are amongst the investments the government has made that have not been implemented. So there is some hesitation from a section of the public who think, is this a ploy to buy more time? Is this a ploy that if we talk about task force, and these challenges abound as they are, the president will keep telling the nation that let us await the term of the task force to get to the end so that we find a solution. What I will tell the president is that we need to resolve the immediate challenges in CBC, but we need to talk about the bigger picture that is the education sector. There are some quick wins that can be obtained by, adjusting a few things in CBC. It is not about doing away with it because we have over 8 million children that are already in it. The failure is in the adult agency that has seen these children go through this process for 6 years and fail to prepare for them. We cannot punish the children for our mistakes. We need to find a solution for them. But as we find a solution for the transition in 2023, when the 6th graders and the standard 8 will be joining secondary school, is that the only thing this task force is supposed to do? Because there's going to be another transition again. Do we want to do this piecemeal so that we form another task force again? Will that be the best investment of his term as president and the resources of Kenyans? My thinking is that there are quick policy things that need to be put in place. One of them is the policy on the implementation of CBC. and an investment plan that is timed, so that we are saying this year, this number of children are going to transit from grade 6 to junior secondary. Where is junior secondary going to be domiciled? It is still up in the air. Parents are not able to plan and prepare. My thinking is, if nothing changes, the junior secondary needs to remain in primary school. We can change its name. We can even call it senior primary. But we find a way, because there are so many things. If we look at this thing from a very linear perspective, we are going to get very simplistic answers. But if you decide that junior secondary gets into primary school, who is going to teach junior secondary? Is it the primary school teacher or the secondary school teacher? Have they been prepared? What is their job grade? Who are they going to report to? Are they going to report to the primary school head teacher or to the secondary school head teacher? What happens to primary schools that are not annexed to a secondary school? When you say you are going to proceed from Citizen TV primary school to Citizen TV secondary, if Citizen secondary school is not there, where does that child proceed? But then, how then do we compare a child? I come from a village called Shitsitswi in Butere. A child who went to Shitsitswi primary, proceeding to Shitsitswi secondary, and a child who went to Alliance primary, proceeding to Alliance secondary. Are we giving them a fair chance at life and at education? Those are policy issues that needed to have been resolved by now. But because they have not been resolved, those are the quick things that the task force, as the president calls it, needs to look at. And these are things that were recommended by the report that was given to Ambassador Amina Mohammed. If the media can go back to her full press briefing that day, she said that there are three things. People are hopeful. CBC has an opportunity to change how teaching and learning. But number two, there are alignment issues that need to be dealt with. One of them was teacher capacity, the availability of teaching and learning material, and coordination, especially for quality assurance and standards. And she said that to provide solution to these problems, we needed to extend the pilot period for another 3 years to try and get a hang of this thing, because many of the people who are participating in it were doing it for the first time. The second thing was to allocate more resources. The third thing was to align the realities on the ground and the expectations and the theory that was in the approach. Do these things require a task force for them to be done? My thinking is no. We have people in the Ministry of Education who are paid by taxpayers to think for this country. Okay. Why can't we just let them do their job and at best get an expert, pull together some of these things and advise the government on how we can get a quick win? Yeah. But then the task force, if it must be established, looks at the larger picture, because we are having a big problem. During the Jubilee administration, the government started giving higher education loans money to children and taking them to private universities. We are seeing a situation where private universities are now thriving, but public universities are collapsing. Is public-private partnership in education working? Maybe somebody needs to show me where it has worked. Yeah. Because we are getting to where we got in the health sector in the late 1990s, when we started substituting public provision of healthcare service with private care. And as it is now, private hospitals are thriving and public hospitals have collapsed. Do we want the education to get there? No.
Okay. So Sossion, so what then are the lasting solutions? Because when you talk about resource allocation, there were about 10,000 classrooms being built by Magoha, 37,000 teachers being recruited to build capacity. We are here now. There's a transition coming next year. What are the solutions?
No, I think let us summarize this new phase this way. That one, the president has made a pronouncement. There will be a presidential working party that is domiciled at the office of the president, not the Minister of Education. That tells you about the sensitivity of the matter. This team shall be made up of professionals. And I think for once in this country, let's allow professionals to do their work. And when the professionals do their work within the law and within the right procedures, we'll not have it wrong. The idea of that, oh, we've had too many task forces is wrong. This is a new president, and he has done the necessary diagnosis about the whole problem and the challenge in the education sector. And I can tell you there's a charter that he has signed. And he has gone through all the issues, including the models of financing education, resolving the issues of collapsing universities, and you can see there will be a university skill board and doubling of higher education loans board. But on this particular one of CBC, it is very clear. We are saying, as a country, we are acknowledging the strong knowledge-based education system. We shall retain it, while again appreciating the competencies, the 21st century and 21st century skills and value-based education. It shall be integrated. So in this arrangement, we'll have a better model of education. It's already laid out. And the process of public participation is a requirement of the Constitution. And fundamentally speaking, even in future, if we are talking about changing the education system, it should be a subject of a referendum, that you must do civic education with the people. The people must understand what their children are learning and what they will be at the end of the education cycle. These are provisions of why are we running away from what the Constitution says. So this process will be the most professional, and it is meant to cure immediate challenges. Look at it this way. You are taking 11 years old, 10 years old to join secondary schools. The secondary schools with limited space is already bursting with 100% transition. There is also another 1.5 million standard 8 KCP students and another 1.5 million standard 6. That brings you to 3 million to already congested secondary schools. And you look at the age stratification of grade 6 learners and those of Form 4, it's a very complex thing. That tells you that in the very beginning, the design of this education system was not seen through. We are now trying to correct what should have been corrected within at the curriculum design stage, and that all these transitions should have been designed at the curriculum design stage. But nevertheless, we are here. We are purporting to have conducted rollout of CBC up to grade 6. What the task force will do is to identify the issues and provide solutions. We are not saying, it's being very simplistic to say, are we deciding to throw away CBC or to retain it? No, we want to review our education system professionally within the framework of UNESCO. And in the process of reviewing, everyone will be consulted. If you look at the wordings, and the wordings that the president has used is robust public conversation. Robust, meaning we must bring everybody on board as required by the Constitution. And this process will be concluded, I want to believe, on time. Kenyans will give their input, they will give their views, Wesaya will give their views, I will also give my views, Janet will give her views. So really, we don't need to preempt what it will do. Let Kenyans prepare to give their views. Teachers will also give their views, and experts will also give their views. There are also government aspirations. We want to industrialize this country. And what is so great in CBC, it's about strengthening science, technology, and mathematics. And we look at Asian tigers, what they've done. Malaysia, when you talk of Technical University of Malaysia, the factories are actually domiciled in the universities. Talk of Korea. Korea mounts one of the most revolutionary education systems. That is why, in terms of technology, they've moved on. What is the national aspiration of Kenya? And what are the type of graduates that we would want to churn out in the entire education system up to the universities? That will form part of the plan. So this is not just a mere activity for public semantic debate. It is the most serious process, and it shall be done. It is a must-do business so that we have a stable education system, a curriculum that is good enough for the country, and teachers who are able to teach. Yeah. And as you can see, in terms of even teacher shortage, within the plan of Kenya Kwanza, is very bold that all the 116,000 teachers shortage shall be fixed in 2 phases, in 2 financial years at 25B. You don't just put money for the sake and employ teachers for the sake, they must teach. And therefore, we must correct our curriculum. So the debate between the 844 and the CBC should be thrown out. We are going to get down to the table, look at the existing curriculum, look at what you are trying to introduce, and I have said very clearly, if you look at the charter, it is saying education, there will be a robust public conversation to look at 2 things. Review of the curriculum and the curriculum content, that is 1. And then number 2, education structure. And while doing that, we will continue strengthening and retaining the knowledge-based education system, integrate the competencies that are required appropriately, integrate the skills, and strengthen value-based education. So in short, we are going to have an absolutely Kenyan-made education system. That's why we are going back to the public. We cannot sit and say, experts in Jogo, you implement what is brought by some ECD teacher from UK and is a consultant for Kenya, and we say we have a curriculum that is imposed by foreigners. No, that will be ceding our sovereignty. We must do our own thing and do it quickly from what we have. And we are not going to undertake what we call reforms. What we are doing and what will be done will be review. And we have to do it professionally, quickly, and meticulously. And that I can tell you, that I can tell you for sure. Yeah, because we want things to work. And we don't want to engage in arguments and semantics.
All right,
for example, if we are talking about transition of children, these grade 6 learners, to the current secondary school, that will have to be dropped. And we might even think of getting down and get rid of the nomenclature of lower secondary, upper secondary, lower primary. And what has happened in other jurisdictions is that grades are pegged on age. If you are in age 6, you are in grade 1. If you are in age 7, you are in grade 2. If you are in age 16, you are in grade 11. That's how it's done. We'll have to rethink so that then we configure, we work on the content. For example, if we want to strengthen science education and we want to lower and start beginning teaching high order science education at grade 7, you put that content in grade 7, get the right teachers to teach. So really, we have to look at the entire economics, workability, and therefore, a lot of things will be done, and Kenyans will speak. And the views of Kenya.
Let me hear Janet, then I'll come.
Before Janet speaks, you know, Honorable Sossion here is telling us that, you know, robust consultation, but at the same time he's telling us it has been decided.
You know,
he has something at the back of his mind. I don't know if it is a function of where he sits. Maybe he will let us know.
Let me rebut. Let me rebut. It's good I clear because this is public information, and those are concerns. There has been discussion on this matter. And we are looking at different options, and people will have opinions. Opinions are coming out. You've spoken here, and you've said, we want these kids to move from grade 6 to grade 7 in the existing primary schools. You've said it. So those discussions are everywhere, and those options are being toyed around. But what we are doing is that, no, we are saying, no, let us not be political with this matter. We cannot talk of saying, no, we are removing CBC, or we are doing ABCD. Let us take take it to the public. And when you take issues to the public, and when you appoint a commission, you give them the terms of reference. What are the issues that needs to be resolved? And the public, what do you have to tell us? One of them will be transition. The public will have to tell us how they want it with the transition from grade 6 to grade 7. Okay. The other aspect will be the content. Yeah. The other aspect will be the structure. Okay. So that framework has been developed. Okay. And once the president issues an executive order, it will guide the process.
Janet.
Yeah.
I think, Trevor, where we should have begun is from Honorable Sossion's opening statement. And I remember him hanging around and saying, I said this, and I said this. And I want to say really that this is not for the sake of winning an argument. The conversation is so serious that it is not whether you've been critiquing or, you know, it's about, and even for those of us that have been at the forefront and have really supported CBC, we are saying there are places we are acknowledging that there are areas of challenges, and we are open to brand new ideas and would support any new initiative that comes, because the idea is pushing our children to the next level. And I think most critical is the question of resources. A lot of the failures that you see being associated with CBC are about money. Yeah. I am extremely excited to have a very optimistic team that knows where money is going to come from to solve all these challenges that we have been experiencing. And I also think that Honorable Sossion, who has hung around for quite a long time, it's quite unfortunate to say that the process was not moved by experts. I think it's really important that we honor our colleagues in the sector, because I do not think that anybody has got brand new experts that they are going to come with from wherever. We are going to just work with the capacities that are there. You're not going to empty KICD and say that you're bringing in new people. I think there is quite a lot of capacity and a lot of people that have given their expertise, and it's only fair that we honor them. And also the role that probably international colleagues have played, because I think curriculums are not just a matter of national importance. We operate, you know, in a global community. And so comparisons and also support, technical support, has been welcome. And I know for sure, even if the president is listening to me, he is going to receive support from UNICEF, he's going to receive support from World Bank. That does not mean that we are not autonomous. Yeah. No, it does not mean that we are not autonomous. It's just a matter of, you know, accepting support. It's just a matter of capacity building, because we are agreeing that we are not the best, you know, that there can be. But then also there is something that my friend Jonathan said here, that let us not imagine that all the evils bedeviling the sector is CBC. Far from it. The education sector challenges are broader than CBC. CBC is just one strand. And everything about our education sector has a lot to do with financing. And I want to tell the president today that even if you do away with CBC and continue giving our public primary schools 1,280 shillings per year, it is not going to work. With or without CBC, for those children who are going through 844, I can tell you for a fact, in this Nairobi, there are children who are at home right now because they do not have the 200 shillings that is being asked at school level. I think the first beginning point is for us to really relook at the financing of our sector. Because what a lot of teachers are complaining about is that they are being forced to take up some of the tasks. Because I know our teachers, sometimes they really get over-involved with our children. They end up loving them, so that a child comes without this and teachers are forced to chip in and so on and so forth. But if really there can also be a conversation alongside this one about financing our education sector, it will go a long, 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 long way. Because I can tell you for sure, and from here that I sit, I welcome the review, but I want to see what is that is going to be done differently. I'm hearing the promise of a robust public participation. How do you robustly engage the millions and millions of Kenya? I really want to hear about the time frame. What time frame are we thinking about this robust engagement that we have been promised? And also, everybody has got their role. And I think when we were struggling with the education reforms, and I'm happy these three gentlemen, all of them have been here, I think we got to a point where we said, can we now map the stakeholders within education? Because if it's a conversation about school fees, for example, what is a teacher union doing in the conversation about school fees? Because of conflict of interest issues. If it's a matter of books, and so that let's map. And we would want to involve the people, but we can only involve the people when experts have already done some parts of the work. It is a big lie to say that you are going to involve Mama Mboga in designing a curriculum. It's a big lie. It doesn't work like that. There is a role of experts in thinking, and that's why people have been trained. That's why people have been employed in various places, so that they think and they do their work. And I really liked what Jonathan said, that a lot of the beatings that CBC is receiving is because you have a lot of people in the Ministry of Education that really do not care about doing their everyday tasks. For example, when you hear parents complaining about books, it's a policy issue. Yet we have officers at even at the lowest level, of the Ministry of Education that could monitor and give, circulars and directives each and every part of the way. Because when you hear parents in private schools saying that they're being told to buy 17 books, then it tells you that there's a very big variance between what is being offered in private schools and public schools. Because, private schools parents are excited about buying a book. They go to school, they find it costing 300 shillings. They have no problem with parting with 300 shillings. But I know for sure, the village school where I come from, Gereka Goro, I have never seen a child carrying a backpack. They only carry a paper bag that has got a few, exercise books. So I think a lot of the issues that you hear with CBC are about keen policy implementation. So as part also, even as the president thinks about the review, we also need to think about a committed staff that is going to follow through, people that are accountable to the people who are believed that when they are given a responsibility, they work on that responsibility and they deliver the results. Because I think that is what, for the last few years, we have not seen that, at Jogo. And I also think that our CS has not done very good, because you cannot keep quiet and then wake up one morning and brandish a directive telling people, go this way, go the other way. Yeah. So we would also want to see a more open Ministry of Education that is not reactive, but proactive, that preempts what people are thinking about, because they are thinkers that are supposed to, from 8 to 5, that is why they are paid by taxpayers, to think for us and to be proactive for our children. Yeah,
but you've mentioned that you support CBC. Mm-hmm. What do you like about it?
I especially like because when we're talking about the right to education of a child, we moved from bringing every child to class. That we achieved. Bringing every child to class, I think we had clocked that by 2019. We were saying we are at 99% and it was wonderful. Now the conversation moved to, when you bring children to class, what are they doing? Do you want to move with only 10 children out of the 140 children that are sitting in that class? Then that does not give those children their right to education. And that is why we embraced CBC, because it is talking about exploiting the potential of every child. I can guarantee you that 844 has wasted so many children. And that is why we thought that by a competency-based curriculum, where that it doesn't look at how much you know, but how much you can do with what you know, So I think for us, it's a question of the right to education of a child. It is not important anymore to bring so many children in class if you're only proceeding with 10 of them. You really need to proceed with everybody, group them into their abilities. I like giving this example that when I was in class, there is my neighbor here who was very good in drawing, so that my art and craft teacher could leave the class and I hand him my book. He could draw very, very, very nicely. But when it came to the exam, he was forever number 47 out of 47, and I was number 1. So why were we not judging his abilities to draw and other competencies that he had? He could jump, high jump, and he could finish the entire poll. I could not do that. But look at what Kenya did to me. It made sure that I proceeded to the university just because I could do math, physics, and chemistry, and left him behind. So those are the inequalities that we were challenging. And we think that the competency-based curriculum will move on with every child, acknowledging every child's potential and giving them grades according to their abilities. That is why I support the competency-based curriculum. Okay, Wesaya, how can these inequalities be bridged? Because this is what I'm driving at. In as much as Sossion says people will give their views, you can give your views now. How are these inequalities going to be bridged?
For me, we need to facilitate the realization to the right to education as a right, not a prestige or a status issue. One of the design flaws with CBC that makes me a little uncomfortable with it is that in the design, there is a status issue. Because when the design does not give the teacher options, because the teacher is ill-prepared, and you are talking about print with the help of your parent, using this resource, and the teacher is not given room to explore that which they may have creatively, because the curriculum is prescriptive. So the teacher hands down that to the learner, that with the help of your father, and Trevor Mbija is the father, and Trevor Mbija leaves Citizen at midnight. So why is the ministry making Trevor look like a bad father because he was not at home to help the daughter with homework? It should guide, the teacher needs capacity to facilitate learning, because there are children who do not have parents, there are children who are in boarding schools, there are children who are in postal institutions. So let us facilitate learning, the acquisition of particular skill. When the design is limited to one approach, and I want to use the current assessment that is just coming to an end, I think there was a question on swimming. And the teacher, the way the question was framed was that the child needs to swim and they need to demonstrate kicking their legs, a forward stroke and a back stroke. Children were doing it in dust. Some teacher, I saw a video, some teacher put a child on top of a table and told them to swim. Now, what is that? Why are we taking our children through this? We can do better. If it is an issue of psychomotor skill, why can't we give options? That it can be swimming, it can be running, it can be, let the teacher use locally available resources. But pegging everything on ICT is making education a status issue, is making education very costly, and it's not sustainable. And that is why my comrade Janet said that we need a costing plan. One of the biggest problems with the CBC as is that as a parent, you cannot sit down and decide to plan for the education of your child, because you do not know what you're going to be asked tomorrow. You do not know what it will cost. So we need a costing plan as part of the solution. But also, for this to happen, we need appropriate content at appropriate level. Now that Sossion and his Kenya Kwanza are talking religion, I want Sossion to look at the assessment for grade 6 Christian religious education paper. It is an equivalent of a Form 4 CRE paper 2.
High order.
High order. The thinking is out of this world. When you ask a child to make value judgment on who amongst the three of us here is beautiful or handsome, and you are asking a 10-year-old child, it is totally complex, because you are bringing to the fore to them a matter of life and death, and you want to have them make a decision at that point when they should just know that we are human beings at that level. They get to that higher level later. Number 3 is on parental involvement. There is nothing wrong in having a parent who does not know how to read or write. There is nothing wrong in having a parent who undertakes night duty and will not be at home to help you with homework. There is nothing wrong with you going home and not finding your father. You study. Education and the teaching process is for professionals. Teachers are trained to deliver the curriculum. We cannot shift that and give it to the parent.
To the parents.
It is a design issue that needs to be eliminated.
Okay. So how do you bridge this equality in education? I think this is where the rubber really meets the road.
Yes,
and whichever structure you use, someone will always complain about something.
And Trevor, the biggest challenge that CBC has brought is exacerbation of inequality. Because when we talk of teaching and learning tools that you want parents to buy, those who cannot buy will not have those learning materials. When you talk of shifting education for parents, there's almost 50% teaching and learning at home and in school, and the parents are supposed to undertake what they even don't know. It is extremely wrong. So when you talk of equality and access, and Kenya must conform to the UN requirement of equitable quality education for all. A child in public school, a child in private schools. What is happening is that the public schools cannot mount this curriculum absolutely. And what is the level of parents' capacity and capability in Kenya? Majority of the parents are in the bottom class. They are struggling families to look for food. Then you tell them that some teaching and learning must go on. Then what was the reason for learners to go to school? We must restrict learning to strictly go on in school, and other things that learners can do at home should be able to do. There is everything wrong about CBC and what is being done here in Kenya. And when we talk of public participation, and we are saying, no, how are you going to involve everybody? The Constitution so says, so you must do it. And this is where things went wrong. Teachers were never involved. When teachers raised concerns, they were battered and interdicted, 285 of them. You know, and I think KNUT should be very honest here. Where things are wrong, they have been fundamentally wrong. And why are Kenyans complaining now? If CBC is good, why are Kenyans complaining? Parents are complaining, teachers cannot teach. And we've seen the other day, even an assessment of swimming. You are training Kenyan children how to swim on dust, and they've never seen rivers in a place called, say, Makueni, where they see rains after 4 years. Really, that tells you, and when you talk of leadership at the ministry, the men and women who are supposed to supervise the implementation do not even understand in the first place. How did we prepare? How did we prepare? We did not prepare. And I think this is what we are seeking to correct. Education is so serious in any country and in any nation and in this government and in this country, just like security. And that's why we must get down and do things right. Let us have the professionals, leaders in this process. And when I talk of professionals, when you are dealing with curriculum, they are experts in curriculum development. Those are the men and women who are supposed to do it. If you are dealing with a virus, you look for virologists. Don't look for Sossion and KNUT. And we must query that we can do what the virologist can do. And I think this is a problem we have in Kenya, that we want to hijack the process, and everyone is an expert, and all of us, we want to be experts of midwifing a curriculum. We even don't know the national goals of education. We even don't know the industrialization master plan of the country and what type of education to mount. What we are saying, this matter is so serious, we must do it. Trevor, on the aspect of funding, when you talk of equitable quality education, equity will be achieved through funding. And if you look at the model of Kenya Kwanza, when we structure our education structure, it's going to break down the cost of education. That's number one.
How?
And look at other inherent policies. If really, for example, now, we stop this process of learners going to secondary school at grade 6, you are offloading the cost, because you have created a 6-year cycle of secondary education that households will have to pay. So we'll have to look at that and restructure. And once we have a good structure, then it will bring down the cost in terms of households. But
where do they go?
Number two, they'll have to stay where they, like grade 6 to grade 7. To me, my personal proposal is that they should be retained in the current primary schools and proceed with grade 7, if possible grade 8, and even grade 9. And in that way, we'll have to reduce.
I want to let him finish. Let him finish, then I'll allow you to ask him a question.
No, allow me. It's my space. In terms of the model of Kenya Kwanza, in terms of resolving cost in education so that you don't transfer to parents in direct charges, KNUT is always very fond, let us not charge. And it is true, we must offload from all the households. Number one, it has been recommended what we call minimum essential package. For particularly schools with low enrollment, that capitation cannot meet their financial needs for the entire year. That will be funded. There will be affirmative financing appropriated to these schools. Number two, we must look at tariffs, introducing tariffs on water and electricity so that schools and learning institutions can operate on lower cost of electricity and lower cost of water supply. Why? Government must be able to subsidize the issues of electricity supply and water supply, and that is indirectly offloading the cost from the parents. Number three, it's recommended that the county government should be allowed to participate in building schools and participating in schools infrastructure. And that needs to be realigned through the law. And other aspects in terms of tertiary and university. Of course, all these funds, TVET Fund, University Fund Board, Higher Education Loans Board, shall all be lumped into one. And we create a basket that you can mobilize resources. And of course, courses to be offered in universities must be identified as relevant to the country and costed and paid for by the government. And then number two, in terms of research, government will be able to appropriate at all times 2%. So if you look at the entire financing model and arrangement and designs of education is going to offload the absolute cost from households. And that needs to be done. And of course, as a country, we've already put a lot of resources. And so, conclusively, in terms of review of CBC, it shall be reviewed. Not by what we call stakeholders who sit at KICD. No. By the people of Kenya. They have the capacity to do that. And what needs to be thrown out will be thrown out. What needs to be corrected will be corrected. And we must have a working model of education. It is not a choice. It is a must-do.
Wesaya, you had a question for...
Yes, a question for Mheshimiwa here. You know, he was in Parliament, and some of these foundation things that we are talking about here, he had an opportunity to start putting them in place.
He was in
like
Education
the policy
Committee
and the law, and he was in the Education Committee. You know, you tell us, what is it that you did so
wait for the question. Let me answer you. It's a question, it's a straight question. It's a straight question. Parliament does not plan, Parliament does not decide. It legislates, it oversights, it represents. The implementation of education programs and origination of policies is done by the minister and is done by the executive arm of government. And now the executive is speaking. That the other executive did not do what they were supposed to do. And now we have to do it and correct it now. So it is now moving forward. A pronouncement has been made, and I think this is a good moment for Kenyans that we should now get our education right. Let the teachers speak. Let the parents speak. Not a small group of stakeholders. And if you look at the wording, it says robust public, and we are very careful to ensure that it is not the issue of stakeholders. The stakeholders will provide the leadership, but the public must have a say. And this is a global best practice, so that we all discuss and agree. Education is dialogue, and education is a component that everybody must participate. That we all agree, and what we shall agree on is what will be implemented.
Let's see what the public is saying right now. There's a lot of tweets coming through, but let's start with the text here from Indimuli Kahi, who's the chairperson, Kenya Secondary School Heads Association. He says, as we discuss, these key issues are of concern. 1, financing. 2, transition. 3, good capacity building plan. 4, enforcement. 5, curriculum interpretation. Is it being done well? Number 6, quality assurance. And number 7, governance in the education sector. Sober discussion is required without throwing away the good ideas in the last task force report. That's from Indimuli Kahi. All right, let's see what you're saying online and bring that up and see it. Pascal Opio says CBC, take kids to primary schools, not secondary, redesign the content, not to foster inequalities among the rich and the poor, relook at the parental involvement, Sarolling says, I look forward to Sosion's input into the education sector reforms, preferably as the CS. We are in a mess. Hurried curriculum reform without robust stakeholder engagement, impunity by TAC boss, including introduction of TPAD, which adds no value, and TPD. PK Wanjiru says, good morning. CBC should be audited from all sides of the country and see what the problems are and hard times parents are facing. Remember, we are not of same class, bearing in mind that parents and teachers are also stakeholders. Wycliffe says CBC is one of the best curriculums, but Kenyans are pleading for high cost. It should be structured so that it becomes affordable to common mwananchi. President, His Excellency Dr. William Ruto, should consider CBC structure. Sarolling says government of Kenya has rushed to build classrooms in schools, gobbling up billions. Truth is, CBC is not a classroom. It is the requisite resources, which as a country, believe me, we aren't there yet. Primary schools will in 2 years to come have extra unused classrooms. Why build more? That's an interesting observation there. Maina Jack says, Mr. Maina assertions are making me worried as a parent. My firstborn is supposed to join school next year. I'm at a point I feel he should wait until government answers the questions Mr. Maina is raising. It seems like the previous government was clueless. Okay. Agali says, CBC is hot air. It needs to be reformed in a big way. I think Janet should visit our public schools and see for herself. She has always defended CBC since it started. That part is also true. Chemai's Korir says CBC should be scrapped simply because, based on these pupils, the education skills are deteriorating extremely. A class 5 pupil is not able to read anything because of CBC. Also, the teachers become so reluctant and lazy because of it. Okay. Kinywa Mushoki says CBC has made education not free anymore, leading to lack of cooperation from parents. It has high demand for money, making them react against the curriculum. Agali says, again, I support Wesaya on CBC issue. We are told of junior school and wonder who is to teach or be in charge. People with private schools are pushing for CBC with hopes of being given a chance to run the junior secondary. All right, now we're running out of time here, but I'll give you a chance for closing remarks, starting with Wesaya.
For me, we need to have this conversation, as the president said on his swearing in.
Yeah.
This conversation, in my perspective, needs to go beyond the current transition. It may need to be about the whole education system. As we fix the 2023 transition issue, we need to look at the next steps so that we have, end-to-end solutions to the problems that are bedeviling this.
Okay.
We have let the private hand get into the business of providing education. Education as a right should not be a business. If we continue the way we are continuing, the invisible private hand in education is going to make education unaffordable.
Yeah.
And it means the children who are literally coming from families that are in the periphery are going to fall off the cliff.
Okay.
It is time that the government brought its resources to the center of provision of education and ensure every child is catered for and every child feels right and happy in school, not because they were swimming on dry ground, but because they are learning.
Okay.
Knowledge should direct the skills.
All right.
But children should not have a skill that they cannot explain.
Okay. Janet, 1 minute, closing remarks.
Yeah, certainly is that a lot of the failures associated with CBC are about financing. And therefore, I'm really keen to see how that is going to be resolved. Because even if we did away with CBC and we retained education as it is, the same parents will attest that they are still straining to finance their own children. Okay. Education has not been free.
All right.
So that at some point, we really must sit down. I agree that we are at crossroads, wondering what is best to do. And I would say for me that the tough path really doesn't look very popular. Okay. So that it's very convenient and easy to choose a path that will probably be very easy for you to tread, and a path that really responds to the calls of the people, that we are saying, we do not want this, so yeah, so you have it. But when we come back to the Vision 2030, and we come back to what really we would want for the future of our children, what is the best way to do? For me, I would call that leadership. Leadership is not populist. Okay. Leadership is treading the path that is not very popular, going a long way, solving the challenges that obtain. Okay. But by the time you get to where you really wanted to, you'll have something to sit down and say, really, it was worthwhile doing all the hard work, that we did. And I would also say that the review is really is really welcome, and say that it is very. I would tell Kenyans to just sit and relax a little bit until you see the terms of reference for the task force. Okay. The fears that we have had for task forces is that there is so much knowledge, lying probably in books and everything else, so that probably it doesn't take a brand new experience of a review and things like those. So really it's about seeing the composition of the task force and seeing the terms of reference, so that then we are able to know how we are proceeding. Okay.
Sossion, on a light note, are you the next CS for education? Has this been discussed?
I'm an ordinary Kenyan. CSs are appointed by the president, and he knows who to appoint. So and I've not put in any application as such.
But if appointed, would you take this?
No, that is out of this. It's not for this show. Let's discuss CBC.
Closing remarks here.
And, I want to say this process will be serious, and Kenyans should take it very seriously. Teachers out there should prepare, parents should prepare, and all stakeholders. It shall be led by professionals. And as has been stated, Kenya runs a risk of mounting education of huge inequalities. And CBC has served to affect the public schools, and the public schools are unable to deliver CBC, and therefore we are facing a real practical inequality in delivery of education in our country. And therefore, this process we should be able to cure and ensure that all schools and education is not a business venture in this country. Not that we are against private actors in this country. They should operate within the law as they do, but we must have an education system that is equitable and that can be accessed by all Kenyans. And therefore, the process that is way ahead of us, all of us are invited. We must engage in it, and eventually, once the recommendations come out, the terms of reference are almost clear. Each one of us can almost write the terms of reference. Number 1, access to grade 7. What do we do about it? Number 2, what do we do with the content? Number 3, how do we prepare our teachers again? And it's obvious. These are the same
Can we wait? Can you be patient as well?
Revisit. And we've seen the comments of Kenyans. You will have to be patient. And we must clear this so that by January 2023, we'll hit the ground running and implementing our education system.
All right.
And it's not just about grade 6 and 7. As Wesaya has talked about it, we must see through up to the university. And then I want to believe there will be a strong leadership at the ministry, at the Teacher Service Commission, and all our institutions to implement, and who will understand what will have to be done so that this is implemented. And we are looking forward to a strong education system. Currently, Kenya, in terms of global competitiveness, in terms of quality and access, we've dropped from number 1 to number 7 in Africa. That means we are on the decline. And now it is time. And now it is time to revisit and reconfigure our education and get back to the top of the chart where we were. It is an opportunity for us to correct. It must be done.
We've really run out of time, but Janet, you have something burning.
Yes, because I really think that it's very important that we correct an impression that has been made here, that private sector, you know, there has been quite a lot of talk about the private sector. And I would really want to say this for sure, that if government does not invest money in public schools. Let government not stifle the private sector in a bid to force parents to take their children to public schools. Government ought to really...
But don't create an impression that there is war between private and public. We must protect public education.
When private sector becomes competitive,
by mounting quality.
Government should acknowledge that really there is something they can learn from private sector and not always sit back, do nothing, not invest. And when private sector leads in innovations, then we are here saying we are making the education sector for private. Government should up its game.
I hope you are not on a marketing mission.
No. But government of Kenya
education remains a fundamental right.
Children. It is true, it remains a fundamental right.
Provided by the state, equitably and of good quality. And that is what you're
now that opens a whole new discussion.
That other business.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making time.
Marketing business.
Sossion, Parliament. All right, we have to leave it there. Janet Mdoni, Ouko, former CC Education, and Wesaya Maina, education expert. Thank you so much for having that conversation on the CBC. This is a conversation that everybody else is welcome to have. As soon as the task force is in place, you will know about it. And also, of course, we'd like to hear your views. And most important, thank you for all of you who sent in your views at Trevor Ombija at Citizen TV Kenya using the hashtag Daybreak. My name is Trevor Ombija. Bye for now. Shut up, boy. And Roy T-Boy are coming up next. It's the boys' show, right? Level up Friday, loosen up a bit. Relax. Yeah, have a good weekend. See you.